And at the same time, let's go back to a person who just joined the organization. They just now started reading books on Robert Kiyosaki. They never have really been taught the philosophy of long-term. They delay gratification in an instant gratification society. Not going to be a seller in the first week of their business. They start working with you. They're putting in some effort. They've got to taproot 15, 20 people, and they say, Warren, my check's $20. This isn't working.
Well, the key is you set the expectation to begin with. It's like, in other words, if you're looking at making money in the next 30 days, go out and do the 15 to 20. But what you're going to find after a year or two, you really don't have much to show for it. And I'll use an example, like what I was saying, after 5.5 years, 200 people. That's not a great result after working 5-6 nights a week for 5.5 years. So literally, if you've done the right job of setting the expectation, it's like someone who goes to college, after 1 year, say, man, I've been working hard for a year. They're calling me a sophomore. Where's my check? They're like, there's no check. In fact, you're still investing. In fact, when you started college, if you're getting a bachelor's, it's a 4-year degree. It takes 4 years. So nobody's complaining after 1 year, how come they're not an electrical engineer yet and getting paid 80-some thousand a year or whatever, because they know it's a 4-year deal. So when you start them and say, look, our goal is that we're going to take a month or two and we're going to build this taproot, then we're going to turn you loose to build a second leg once we've helped you develop the competency by helping you graduate from an apprentice to a journeyman, so you can go from a team, part of the team, to being a team leader.
Mm-hmm. And are there benchmarks that you could say, well, once X happens, you can open a second leg? Is it a gut situation?
Well, I'm sure.
Do you set benchmarks within your team?
I'm sure there's different, depending on the compensation plan, et cetera. But I mean, certainly, I would think that you could build a leg 10 levels in depth working with your new person. And if you can help them accomplish 10 levels in depth, that certainly shows if they've been out there showing plans. I look at, can they show a plan? Mm-hmm. Can they do a one-on-one? Try to help them get on a board so they can feel that they can represent and defend their plan. Can they sponsor people? I just want to make sure they can do the basic rotation steps, so when they come out here and are called the team leader, that they can truly lead that team, so we don't have the blind leading the blind.
Mm-hmm. As you build a leg, and this may not have a specific answer, is there a point in time that you say, this leg is good to go? I'm opening a second leg. Is it 100 people deep, 1,000 people deep? Is it just all the problems stop? Nothing comes up to you more problem-wise? Is it I've got 4 leaders at a certain rank? What kind of benchmarks do you use?
Well, I don't think I ever would say this leg is good.
Okay.
However, I would say that I have enough leaders in that leg that can handle the issues. As soon as I get to the point where I can have somebody else rotating the pattern and they're able to build some depth in that spot, if I can get to the point, you can't delegate leadership. Like, I can't say, okay, Art, you're a leader. Only Art can take leadership. I can't give him leadership. Mm-hmm. So, I can't delegate it, but it can be taken. And I wait and I build depth until someone can actually go and start to build depth as well as me in that leg, in which they should, because they've got more time to work their business than I do with my other businesses. But when they get to the point where they're doing everything that needs to be done without me telling them to do it, then I know I've got a leader that's doing, and then I'm like, hey, guess what? Here, I want you working over here too, and you can work both spots, because they took it from me. Mm-hmm. So, and then as soon as it's duplicated to the point where someone's doing what needs to be done without me telling them to do it, then I know that gives me time to go start another leg.
Okay. So as you're listening to it, there isn't a specificity to it. It can change leg to leg. One leg, it was 38 people were there, and then all of a sudden, wow, they're rotating the pattern because maybe they were hungrier. And another leg might be 100. You just have to look for the person, as Oren says here, that now is themselves duplicating the pattern because probably they're hungry enough to do that, and now they have the competence.
Even with that, like even after I get a performer that's doing that, when we talk in our book, Launching a Leadership Revolution, you go from a performer, when you step up to leader, now you're orchestrating your performers. In other words, you're helping them make sure that they have a game plan to drive the next 10 levels in depth and drive the next 10 levels. To me, we found that, boy, if you're driving 10 levels in depth on a 30-day basis, you've got a leg that's about ready to explode, because that's creating so much belief through the whole organization that, man, this train is leaving the station. We talk about information, progress, and profit. The information step is, people get in your business because they hear the right information and say, wow, this sounds good. I think this train's going to leave the station. And yeah, I'd love to travel the world. I'd love to be out of my job. So they get in on information and hope. they stay in when they see progress. They say, man, I'm going to stick around. This thing looks like it might work. Mm-hmm. And so that progress starts to change that belief window I was talking about. And then when they qualify and they start that second leg, they actually start making a profit. That's going to lock them in because they're starting to see the results from their investment. So information, progress, profit.
Okay, so without a result, we're in trouble.
You know, I mean, how many people have got in on the hope in this business, but we want to take them from hope to belief, from hope to results through building depth, because it's hard. Even if they choose not to do it, they can never come back to you and say, Art, you didn't help me. Mm-hmm. You say, I mean, I love it. Someone comes up to me and says, well, you know, I'm not happy. You're not helping me enough. I'm like, well, what do you mean? He said, well, I'm not making any money. And I said, well, what did I promise when you got started? I said that we would work this one leg together and I would teach you the basics. And if you were a good student, you learned the basics and you could turn loose and build a second leg. And I said, if you take a look at I had a conversation like this. I said, if you take a look at your Taproot, you have over 1,000 people showing up to events in your Taproot. Wow. I said, do you remember what we committed to when you got started? They said, yeah, you said that, you know, you'd build this Taproot. They remembered it exactly right. And I knew they would because I said the same thing to everybody. Mm-hmm. And so I said, well, listen, it sounds like what we did the first part that we said we'd do together. We've got over 1,000 people, but it doesn't look like you did your part where you went out and duplicated in the second leg. Now, I'm not here to sit down with you and complain that you're not doing what you said. And that turned it totally around because they knew that I was right there. They knew. It's like, hard to argue, 1,000 people is a pretty good leg. But they only had about 5 or 10 on the side. And 5 or 10 on the side is not going to produce significant income. But there's still potential that they can if they'll learn the basic pattern.
Yeah. One way to look at it, you know, we're going to go rotate the pattern, build 10 people deep, 20 people, 15 people deep. And really what ends up happening is the person that's got a leg, not even in the thousands, 50 down one leg.
Oh, yeah.
That leg is an asset. All of a sudden, they can say, okay, that leg produces 5,000 in volume a month. You know, that's 60,000 in volume a year. That's an asset.
Sure is.
Yeah. 6 months later, they can look at that, and that leg may be the best thing going on in their life because they may not have any other assets going on in their job or any quick internet business they're trying to do or whatever it is, and they need to understand the value of that leg long term and see it as an asset because it's truly what you've helped them develop.
That's right.
When you're rotating the pattern, 10, if it grows by 10 a month, which is a strong growth rate, especially initially. Mm-hmm. And once there's 1,000, it might grow significantly more. But let's say the pattern stops. Let's say all of a sudden it goes 28 deep and nothing happens the following month. Whose responsibility is to rekindle the bottom of that taproot?
Well, leaders are always responsible. And so if someone tells me that they're not responsible, if someone tells me that well, someone down at the bottom needs to do something. As soon as you start pointing fingers or blaming somebody else, then that tells me you're not the leader because you're blaming somebody else versus accepting responsibility. But as a leader, you know that, hey, my responsibility is to make sure that taproot's still growing. So if it's not growing and no one else is stepping up to take responsibility for it, then you take responsibility. Get down there, meet the new people, make relationships at the bottom of your team, and start rotating the pattern again and pick it up and start rolling in depth.
So an organization is either growing or not growing. Your fitness level is either getting better tomorrow or not tomorrow.
That's right.
It's not just network marketing. It's just about everything in life is either getting better or declining, in progress or in decline. How do you handle that philosophy in this taproot? Because most people are like, well, I built it. No, now it's declining. You got to keep building it. Is that a nonstop battle, or is that how does that fit in here?
You have to build depth until someone else realizes how important building depth is that they take it from you. In other words, when someone gets to the point where they're making a 6-figure income from the business and they recognize that where you built depth is one of the spots that's important to them, then you can start training them to come with you until they realize, man, it becomes just as important for them to see that leg continue to go deeper than it is you. And you get a couple people that are just as interested in that leg going as deep as you are, then eventually they'll start taking that from you. And that's what's happened. I mean, you get to the point where now you're really just mentoring the guys and the gals that are actually responsible for keeping that leg rolling. But I'll tell you, if at any point that leg doesn't continue to grow, because nothing is static.
Right.
It's either growing or it's not growing. And, the crazy thing is it can go backwards just as fast as it goes forward if you're not maintaining a depth focus. This is a very secure business by putting in patterns and game plans in place to ensure that depth is occurring. It doesn't have to be you the rest of your life because you're going to raise up a whole group of leaders to do it, but somebody has to be responsible to ensure. Goal is planned conflict against the status quo. It doesn't happen by chance, it happens by design.
So just to absolutely clarify here, we're starting a leg. Initially, we sponsor somebody. They don't have the confidence because they don't know how to build it yet because they haven't built anything. So you're saying, okay, together, let's go build this. Let's rotate the pattern together. You're helping build depth so that they can see a result. The result gives them confidence. The confidence allows them to believe this is happening, which allows them to go learn more, which allows them to go do more, rotate the pattern more, create more confidence, go up the leadership ladder, so forth. We're either rotating the pattern with their list, warm market, cold market, whatever it may be, going in depth. So it's not you placing 100 people one under another into this
Right.
leg. Is that correct?
That's right.
The only time you would place is if that leg is no longer
If you run out, if you have absolutely no one to work with, would be the only time you'd need to.
Yeah.
I mean, your goal it's like, well, when would you ever have to place? It's like, well, here's the basic rule. If you don't have people to work with that lead you to people to work with, then you don't have people to work with.
Right. So that's just a leg with people.
That's right.
And so at that point, you go and place something.
There you go.
But you say, well, why don't I just open a new leg?